you'll take that jump, and there will be a lot of struggles in it, but you will feel alive at the end of it, and it will be worth the jump. Aim for the extraordinary. I know you're sitting there going, man, aim for the extraordinary. I'm asking you to put an extra 10% in. You're like, extra 10%? I'm packed. I'm tired. This is where all the joy lies, I feel, in education. I was at the most motivating spotlight a couple of days ago by Kyle Kitchen, The Experience of Three, and he talked about make unforgettable experiences. Make things in the classroom where 20, 30 years from now, kids are still talking around it over drinks. And what's really neat about that is if you can do that, you're also, as a teacher, get to look back on those experiences and relive that joy. Now, there's a lot of obstacles, though, to create those experiences sometimes. We go to these conferences and we come up with all these ideas, but then we go back and we say, well, how do I implement them? Well, you've got to be creative with how you get through them. One is involved community. I've seen some really neat things in this role. I saw a teacher turn to me once and say, I want to go one-to-one technology and bring robotics into my school. Now he's went crowdfunding. It's raised like $38,000, and he's achieved his goal by reaching out to the community. The other one is I had a friend who did a butterfly inquiry. It was sensational, wanted to share it with all the schools on the board. She reached out to Niagara Falls Transit. Next thing, they give her a brand new bus, a driver for the whole day. It was like a party bus driving around the city. These kids will never forget that. Grants are so important because if you want to do those things you're really passionate about and you can't, you got to look for grants. But you know what the grants? You got to go that extra 10%. That extra 10% is going on Google and finding them, applying for them, keeping up, making videos at the end of it, whatever they want. You bring in those grants. That's how you bring in the robotics, the green screens. Wendy Belinsky just got a grant for $2,000 worth of books. Think of what her class library just looks like right now. I have another friend who has got a grant for a grocery store, and they fund her Master Chef program, and that's how they do their math. Because she reached out. Here's a sensational one. This is in Niagara Falls, maybe 15 minutes from here. This is an outdoor classroom achieved from a grant. Teacher steps out, 2 teachers stepped out, put in the time and effort to fill that out. This is where they teach every day. Think of that as your physical environment. Think of what kids feel when they walk through there, and think of how that can promote happiness and how that can promote success in a classroom. But it comes from that extra 10%. That's where the joy lies in education. How I see education early on is I had this level 4 philosophy. So we know level 4 is going above and beyond. I attached a little bit to that, and I said, I want to go above and beyond my own expectations of myself, right? So I'm looking at myself, and I'm saying, every time I do something, I'm going to make it better. Every lesson I teach, I'm going to try and make it better. Every time I make a video, I'm going to try and make it better. And I put a little rubric together because that's what we do in teaching, and I got this rubric. And I think, on an acute response level, when you do that, it leads to this excitement and passion in the moment, but it also leads to you being motivated, confident, proud as a teacher, and loving what you do. To do this, not easy, right? It takes a growth mindset. We all talk about growth mindset. You have to believe that you can make all those changes. But more importantly, I think it takes a lot of grit. Teaching's a long career, and you need a lot of passion and perseverance to go with that. So you got to find it in you and have the grit to go after it and stick with what you're doing. The last one is a strong why. When I'm tapping you for 10%, I need you to go into your why, because that's where you're going to get the ability to stay a little later, stay up a little later, do a little more. Tapping into your why is so key. D2L has a saying, and their mantra for their company right now is, we love the way you teach. And I think it's so important that you love the way you teach. I think it's so important that you look back on your career and you think, I was a sensational educator that did so good for kids, right? You've got to love the way we teach in education. Favorite quote right now is progress equals happiness, right? You look at people who are struggling, most of them have stopped learning, right? You look at people who are really happy and motivated, it's because they're constantly growing, they're constantly going to conferences, doing PD, learning, and pushing themselves, right? The next one is tap into your passions. We have this really great thing called extracurriculars where we could basically create anything in a club or any extracurricular event and invite people. So they give us the ability to put stuff we look forward to into our teaching. How crazy is that? I love the Terry Fox Foundation. In September of every year, I look forward to running this event. It makes me feel alive. It makes me go, I can't wait for September, right? We're lucky we get to do that. And why? Because we make more connections with students in the school, fulfilling our happiness, because we know that those relationships are important. Not only that, we have a larger impact on the school, which is further fueling our why and making us feel like we've done what's right in education and we've done ourselves proud. Through curriculum expectations is another way. So we got this curriculum that's relatively wide open. They tell us what we have to teach. They don't tell us how to teach it. So we can go out and bring in any type of content. We can bring in different books. We can bring in videos we like. We can bring in our signature strengths and do whatever we want to an extent, and we can tap into our own passions and bring those to students. I have a friend, Jack, and he used to build houses, and this was his grade 7 project in the structures unit. And the best part of the story is when I talked to Jack about it, he can't not smile. He's a grumpy-looking guy sometimes, and he's smiling his little face off if I mention these. And what makes me happy with that, when I go in his classroom, he's got them perched up like trophies. And you think of, that's an experience like Kyle Kitchen talked about. Those kids will never forget that, and he will never forget that as a teacher. But it's more important, too, I think, sometimes to learn about what students love. In the age of technology, we can be using online to do like Google surveys and SurveyMonkey and forms and all these different things to find out what our students love. Or we can embrace things like Genius Hour, Makerspace, Student-Led Inquiries, FedEx Days. That's where it is, because you get to see those students, what they want to do and how they want to do it, and you can tap into that passion. And the key is to learn along with them, right? It's a great way to engage and empower them. Empowerment is so important, right? That we not only just engage them and want them to listen, but we do something that makes them feel like they're powerful, right? So we did a Minecraft about 5 years ago. We were doing some Minecraft stuff, and my buddy wanted to do it, so we had no idea. We wanted to try it, so we had no idea, and we saw these kids, and they decided that they would help us in the class, and they ended up rebranding the class called Mathcraft. It was so well done and so inspiring that we brought the kids to connect, and they presented, and we just stood back and watched this group of empowered kids. And it's something I'll never forget, and I'm sure it's something they'll never forget as part of their education, coming in and getting one of these little lanyards. And it was a sensational experience full of empowerment. And the coolest part about kids is they just are fun. They just go after fun all the time, so if you can tap into their fun piece. But the other thing is they're relevant. There's nothing worse than feeling you're antiquated as a teacher, right? You want to be relevant. You want kids to come into your room and feel like what they're doing, you understand as a teacher their world, right? These are my kids. How cute are they? I think the last one, and I think what teachers do really, really well who are happy and motivated, is they have this really cool ability and to almost like really hone in on just the students. And it's like they have a force field around the students, and they are able to deflect all the negative stuff that's happening, right? They're so student-focused that they use that to distract them from things that would otherwise they would perceive as negatives. I think it's really important to put yourself in their shoes, right? So they sit in front of us all day, and I think it's important that as a student, we ask ourselves as a student, would we want to be in that class? Would we want to sit through that lesson? Would we want to be a part of that unit? Would we want to learn from that learning style? And I think we got to be honest about that as teachers, because if we're really honest with it, then if the answer is no or not yet, then it just means you got to work a little bit harder. You got to tap your 10%, and you got to make it that way. And because not just for the students, it's always for the students, but it's also for yourself, because it will make teaching amazing. The other thing is think of your legacy in teaching. How will you be remembered by your students? I know how Wendy Belinsky is going to be remembered by her students. I know by the way they look at her. I know that she will be their favorite teacher of all time. And I think that is the biggest compliment you can get in education. I don't think there's anything better. And sometimes kids will say that to you, and you just kind of sit there and go, you're like, oh, thank you, and you're busy with your day, but you stop and think about what that kid just said. You're my favorite teacher of all time. Think of the impact you must have had on them. They've all went through tons of teachers, and yet you're the one. That's what we should be aiming for in education. I have this belief, and I think we need to never stop believing that we have the ability to reach every single student. It might not be true, but we have to believe that we have that power. Because the belief in that is going to challenge us and going to push us harder to get there. And the learning that's going to happen in that is going to be incredible. And you might not get that student or that student or that student, but you're learning about how to get students. And when you get one, it's like when you get that student that you shouldn't have got, the one that like challenged you the most, that made you pull out your hair, and you get them. I have a little story, and this student wasn't challenging, but I had a student that lost his dad in an explosion, a greenhouse explosion, and then came into my room, and he was really struggling socially, emotionally, and I remember working with him, and I didn't really get him, I don't think. I tried to get him, and then I continued to work with him beyond that. But I go to all his graduations now. And so he bought me a tie, and every time I go to a graduation, he wears it. Well, he just FaceTimed me, or Facebooked me or something, and said, "Mr. Dunlop, I just got into dental school in Boston," and that was always his dream. And I'm like, and so honey and the kids, we're going to Boston at some point, and we're going to check that out. And I have this idiosyncrasy I do, and I go to every graduation of every kid I taught, and I just sit in that crowd, and I just think to myself, this is so important. And it's crazy, the reaction you get, because kids go like, why are you here? Like, I can't believe you came. And you're like, I can't believe I would ever think of missing something like this, right? It's so important because, you know, you love those kids. I start every year saying, I'm going to fall in love with you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to lose sleep. I'm going to be stressed about you. And I say that from day one because I know what's going to happen. And I love it because that emotion is what drives me to be there for them. I have this thing coming out called motivatededu.com, and I don't know when it will be out, but I'm working towards it. And what I want to do is I want to continue this type of conversation in education. And the mission behind the thing is I want to connect educators that want to be happy and motivated together. So I'll figure out, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but through social media, I want to bring people together so it's another platform where everyone can find a really cool environment that's full of positivity. My real goal is to celebrate educators and recognize the great things that are going on out there. I think it's so needed in education. I think if I was to say one of the greatest needs could probably be the fact that we as teachers, we need recognition. You could be tough and you could think you don't, but it's so gratifying and it's so like motivating, and it really improves the amount of happiness you have in the profession. So I'm going to try and figure out, I don't have it all figured out, but it's, my favorite motivational speaker said, sometimes you just got to commit to something. And so by telling you today, I'm just committing to it, and I will figure out how to make this happen. And the final thing is I'm going to inspire within this website teachers. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to curate all the positive stuff in education into one spot. Like I talked about earlier in terms of I think we're inundated with negative media all the time. You can't get away from it. I want to curate that into a space so an educator can go in there and guaranteed leave there more motivated and inspired by putting in videos like that, research, suggestions of books, movies, whatever comes out. I want to hub that in one space for people. I wrote a book. I think I have a couple minutes. I'll tell you about it. I wrote this book on motivation and education, and super passionate about it. And I just got rejected again from another publishing deal yesterday. And it's so interesting because I really believe in it. And when I wrote the book the first time, it was all on motivation. And when I didn't get the deal yesterday, I was like, it was absolutely shattering. I'm going to be honest with you, but it made me realize something, is that I missed part of the book. I started the book with motivation. You got to start the book with happiness. You got to talk to people about and give them some skills and abilities to tap into that happiness first, because that's what will eventually drive your motivation. So I am jacked to get back at this thing and redo it and reformulate it and restructure it and put this thing out. So I would love you to follow me, and not because I care about who follows me, but I'm trying to build an environment, and I'm trying to build a community around myself of people who want to be happy and motivated, and I really want to see what you do. After this is over in a couple minutes, I want to stand outside, and if you want to talk, I want to meet you. because I think that's really important, and that's what really drives me to be happy, and really it makes me, it validates my why. I want to finish off by saying thank you again, and this is thank you for everything you do as educators. I have been blessed with a role that I get to see what you guys do on a daily basis, and it is inspiring. It took me to a level of motivation and education that I don't worry about going back down like that anymore, because I just think of what I've seen, and I just think of Wendy Belinsky and Roger Bannister, and I know that it's entirely possible to do that. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank you for coming. I know it's Friday, and it's a long conference, and I know what people do in the nighttime in conferences, and so for you to somehow get out of your bed, good on you. And I want to throw out a very special thank you to my parents for coming. And as well my wife. But one thing I want to say is, my mom had a really tough couple of years, and she broke both her legs, and for her to come out here, it means the world to me. And I just want to say to her, I love you as much as you love me. Okay, thank you very much.